I'm Ryan Dozer. I would say I'm an AI first marketer. I run a six-figure marketing agency, which is about 75% of my work. And then the other 25%, whenever I find time, is I run a YouTube channel with just my name, Ryan Dozer AI, focused on, AI tutorials, AI reviews, where my selling point is, hey, here's what's going on in the AI world, and here's how we actually apply it to the real world. So I take my marketing background and all the work that I'm doing for clients, who are seven-figure clients, by the way, and then I apply that knowledge into my YouTube channel, where I would argue that most other people is just kind of the hype, the doom and gloom, the what I call low IQ, top of funnel AI content. I try to avoid that stuff.
Whether you're on social media or not, like everyone's hearing this AI thing, right? Like it's such a buzzword at this point. So how do you go about kind of distilling this information? How do you apply that in like a very real sense to your clients?
Well, the first thing people need to realize is that the models are now good enough, in my opinion, right? Ever since I would say like Opus 4.5 or somewhere around a year or two ago, once those models got good enough to perform like 99% of knowledge work tasks. So marketing, content creation, drafting an email, making an image, things like that. And what people need to understand why this is so important is that they're asking the wrong questions. It's this new model comes out. Oh my God, let me drop what I'm doing and go test out. Was it GPT 5.6 sold today, right? And it was Fable 5 last week and Opus 4.8 the week before. Like I said, the models are good enough now where that's almost irrelevant at this point, right? You need to have a system and a harness figured out where it's just a plug and play situation with whatever model we can continue to use. And so what people need to ask, the question is, Marlon, is what are the biggest bottlenecks in your day-to-day, whether that's in your own business, if you run a business, or if you're in a 9-to-5 job situation? What are the bottlenecks that are eating your time? How many hours a week are you spending on certain things where you know that you could plug and play AI to get more time back? Or what's costing you the most amount of money? Especially in my case, as a solopreneur, there's all these different SaaS tools and softwares that I pay for that, maybe I could go to Fable 5 and just find a better solution that way, right? And save hundreds, if not thousands of dollars that way at scale. So the question is not, should I use, Soul or should I use GPT 5.5 versus Fable versus Opus? It's, how are my systems set up correctly where it doesn't matter what AI model I plug and play, it's going to work fine because the models are just good enough now for 99% of knowledge work. We're not talking about programming or coding. We're talking about work that most people are doing on a day-to-day.
But for the listeners or just for business owners in general that aren't maybe in AI as much as you, just explain the difference between prior to AI and now implementing AI. Like, how does that look?
Yeah, well, first things first, I started technically using AI probably like 2021 when Jasper, formerly known as Jarvis, first came out.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar with Jasper AI. They're a popular AI tool still to this day. They were using GPT-2 under the hood. So it was a SaaS tool using GPT-2. Back at the time, I had no idea how any of this stuff worked. I thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. So that's
right.
that was kind of my start with AI. Because back then, Google's algorithms weren't really tracking AI content. Like no one really caught up to this whole thing yet. And so as this progressed, ChatGPT came out 2022, 2023, something like that. That was really when the light bulb clicked, not only for me, but for a lot of people, right? And so, I won't go a timeline step by step. I'll fast forward to today, right? So today, I use Claude Code and Codex for about 99% of my work. Now, I know Claude Code is scary to a lot of marketers out there. It's not that scary, I promise you. You're just talking to an AI coding agent using plain English. That's how good these, systems and models are. But how I'm using it today versus before, I'll just give you a really quick example. All the websites that I build now, and again, I have a non-technical background. I think that's very important to understand here. All the websites that I build are built with Claude Code, GitHub, Cloudflare, and the Astro Web Framework. So I'm completely off of WordPress now versus before, the best solution was WordPress where you're installing themes, you're going page by page. I don't know if you're a WordPress guy, but you know what I mean when I'm talking about this.
Yeah.
Page by page, updates, click the link, copy, paste. And like the thought of even using WordPress anymore just wants to bang my head against a wall because of how inefficient it is where I have this Claude Code system synced to GitHub and Cloudflare. And I know it sounds confusing if you've never done it, but one quick example that I recently did is that I have an affiliate link for this tool called Data for SEO. So if I want to add that to my website for every single link that I'm already linking to dataforseo.com, before on WordPress, it would be find the pages, insert the link, update the post, do the same thing. Well, now I just give it that affiliate link, go to Claude Code, and I say, find where data for SEO is on ryandozer.com, replace it with this affiliate link, boom, it's done, right? I don't even have to do anything else past that. These systems are just so interconnected now, where I swear to God, I've saved 10, 20, probably 100 hours worth of work. Now I'm working more on top of that because I can do more, of course, now.
Yeah.
But it's like the light bulb has just been so unlocked for me ever since I set up this Claude Code and Codex setup within VS Code. I'm happy to screen share this later on too.
Yeah, lovely. We're going to dive into the nitty gritty as well, everybody. I haven't played around with WordPress. I'm more of a Shopify Wix individual. But even then, trying to historically, anyone who's played around with web pages and stuff, it's a lot, right? Even like ClickFunnels and stuff, I've completely got off of that. I used to use that a lot for just landing pages and selling e-com and stuff. Yeah, so the speed at which now you can move, and now you even see companies, right? Now you even see Shopify, for instance, being like, okay, we understand the trend. We now have to integrate ourselves within Claude, all right? Or at least have an MCP, for instance. So the speed, anyone listening, the speed, even, Ryan broke it down for you. It may still sound complicated, but trust me, it is not as complicated as you probably think. Now, what do you think the biggest disconnect is, or the biggest barrier right now you see from talking to everybody?
I think a lot of it is resistance to change, personally. I think people have been doing something the same way for this long, and the thought of trying to drop what they're doing and learn something new, that isn't just with AI. That's been scary from the beginning of time.
Sure.
But I would also think too is there's information overload combined with hype. I think that deters a lot of people, right? So people just hear all this AI news and hype 24/7 every time they go on X or LinkedIn or wherever they're going, or YouTube, and they think they're behind. So what's the point? Why should I learn something if a new model's already out and now it's gone the next day and this stuff changes 24/7? Why would I drop what I'm doing and learn this when it's going to be replaced tomorrow? I think that's a lot of the thought process that goes into it too. So it's a combination of resistance to change and just kind of being bombarded by all the hype and everything else about AI that just confuses people.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What would you say, any signals you look for a good piece of content?
Yeah, good and quality content is obviously subjective, right? It depends on the viewer. YouTube historically is, even now, I would say is probably still the best spot. I think in terms of just pure news and updates, I think X is probably that good place for that. There are some tutorials on there, don't get me wrong, but it's a lot of AI generated articles with a million bookmarks that no one's actually going in and building things. You know what I'm saying? But YouTube, there are actual YouTubers that I know personally. I'll just throw a couple names out there. Mark Kashev, really good Claude Code expert. Sabrina Romanoff, good friend of mine, client of mine now. There are people out there who are actually building things. And so that's what I would distinguish between these hype people and how to determine what's good, what's not. Does it apply to reality? Yes or no? If the video is about, oh my God, new AI model comes out, new update comes out, I wouldn't even waste your time and watch it, versus a tutorial about, how to, set up something on Claude Code that's going to improve your efficiency by 5 hours a week or something like that. So you have to break down what is practical and what applies to the real world versus what is theory. This is kind of the basis of my setup here. So first and foremost, I'm using Visual Studio Code, known as VS Code. This is just what's called an IDE. If you've never heard of an IDE or used one, you can think of this as a wrapper to just pulling up a terminal. So it's a lot more friendly user interface here with all the files and folders on the left-hand side versus pulling up a terminal and then just getting lost and overwhelmed and don't know what you're doing. And in terms of how I'm accessing Claude Code, I'm simply using the extension, the Claude Code extension, which you can install for free. It's the official extension from Anthropic here. And then all you would do once you install the extension, if it's going to load here, is that you would sync up your Claude account. So you have to have a paid Claude account, at least $20 a month to use Claude Code. I'm on the $100 a month max plan. And that's kind of my setup right here. In addition to Claude Code, I also use Codex. So Codex is OpenAI's competitor to Claude Code. I use Codex mostly for images. I think GPT Image 2 is the best image generation model right now. And then I also use it for what's called red teaming, you could call it, right? Where checking work that Claude Code produces and then kind of having it go back and forth and battle each other for the best outputs. If I'm doing landing pages or websites, or it's good to have kind of a second opinion with the GPT models going after kind of the Opus and the Sonnet models with the Claude Code side. And then on the left-hand side here, you'll notice a bunch of files and folders. And, I'm not the poster child for organization here by any means, but the thing that I will call out is that I have what are called skills. I'm sure you and your audience are familiar with skills, right? Skill markdown files. And so all these are, if I go ahead and just click one, I'll click on my anti-slop skill. These are just essentially SOPs or standard operating procedures for AI agents like Claude Code to follow to accomplish a particular task. So the anti-slop skill helps remove all the slopification marks of AI and content that we see, right? The delve, robust, emojis, M dashes, if not this, then that, right? We see all these slopification marks. And so that's the purpose of this skill, is to get rid of it. Now, I also have several other skills for SEO. I have email skills, web designer skills, landing page skills, and stuff like that. And one other thing I would leave your audience with too is that I would get very, very granular on your skills. And what I mean by this is, instead of having, let's say, just one email skill, well, an email newsletter is different from a sales email, is different from a drip sequence email, right? So there's different types of content, like different emails or different types of articles SEO wise, where you want to have one granular skill that is a master at a very specific task, and not just one email skill or one SEO skill to accomplish everything. That's not going to move the needle. The more context, the better. Your website, you have a brand guide, anything that you can feed the model context, the better you're going to get. But to the second point, and more importantly, you have to know what good looks like. You have to have some subject matter expertise in order to know what is good, what's a good output, right? Because just by default, creating a skill and saying, build me a landing page to make $1 million, it's not going to know what to do if you don't give it more instructions on what good looks like, right? So for instance, I understand, like I even built this interactive terminal. Fable 5 built this. I thought this was kind of a cool element. But what I understand about landing pages from 10 plus years in the marketing industry, social proof matters, right? And so I have some social proof kind of above the fold here. We have a giant call to action button. And I can scroll down at some of these other elements too, actual screenshots of what these skills have produced, with some proof that I've made over 100K in revenue from these skills across new clients, digital product sales, affiliate commissions, some testimonials, right? We need more social proof from what people are actually saying. What's included? Who's it for? Who's it not for? FAQs, right? So I understand the architecture that goes into a decently converting landing page of industries that I have familiarity with. And so that's what I would say is context, and then also understanding what actually moves the needle for a given task.
What do you find kind of maybe Claude versus OpenAI? Is there any differences between the two models?
From my experience, just from me getting into this, I found that Opus and Sonnet models have produced higher quality outputs just from a marketing and content perspective. But with GPT, very well versed in the technical coding aspect of things, it oftentimes will catch things like when I'm building websites or landing pages that Opus or Sonnet did not catch from a technical standpoint. Now, Sonnet and Opus are more creative, they're more marketing minded. I would say GPT models are more technical focused, just from my experience, right? But they also have the best image model right now, which surprises me that they surpassed Google's Nano Banana, at least for now. I don't know what they got cooking behind the scenes. But that's what I would say. And you mentioned the system or the harness aspect of it. And I'll just tell you and your audience this. The reason that I use VS Code and not the Anthropic desktop app, the Codex app, Cursor, or Google's anti-gravity is because I might be a little more conspiracy minded, I think, than most people. But where I'm going with this is that if I use the Anthropic desktop app, okay, they're incentivized by every means to quote unquote nerf other models that you want to sync in there, right? So I would rather use a Microsoft product, which is Visual Studio Code. Yes, they technically have invested in OpenAI, but they're not the Codex app by any means, where you get more of a fair play, I would say, across Gemini models, and Anthropic models, OpenAI models, and even open source models if you want to sync up open source models in here too. And this is also transferable, Marlon, right? So if Claude Code and Codex went away tomorrow, well, guess what? I could install the latest and greatest AI coding agent inside VS Code and then have it take off where it left, or go where it left off, because it knows all the files and the folders inside my IDE setup. This is all local. This isn't locked into an ecosystem on Claude.ai or ChatGPT.com. And that's what people need to understand. When they're inside those web apps, building projects, building GPTs, you are locked into their ecosystem because it is on their server in the cloud. Versus this setup right here, I'm backing it up to Google Drive. So just have some security precautions there in place. But this is all local. These are my systems, and I can plug and play this with any AI coding agent or AI model that comes around.
Is there anything else to kind of get going with VS Code, or should I hook up any other tools potentially?
Yeah, so within VS Code, you can also sync up really anything via MCP, API, CLI, right? I know those are like some really technical acronyms, but if you're familiar with what an API is, you should understand that MCP and CLI are very similar connection types. And so in here, now I'm not going to go in here and show you my API keys or MCP connections, but in here, I'm connected to an SEO tool called Data for SEO. I'm connected to my social media tool. I'm connected to Google Search Console. I'm connected to many other things. And that's the other key takeaway here is that I technically don't have to leave this interface, right? Because I'm connected to every single tool, whether it's API, MCP, or CLI connection, that I can do all of my work from this one interface in VS Code. Again, you don't have to use VS Code. That's just my IDE of choice. Cursor is very popular, especially since SpaceX just bought them. But from my experience, there's more of a paywall side to Cursor if you're trying to just start something from scratch here versus VS Code's completely free to get started with.
Okay, interesting. So kind of tying things together here, right? So again, identify the problem. Looks like we are model agnostic. Get an IDE, VS Code, or some of the others that Ryan mentioned, and then connect the two extensions, and then from there, I basically just have to start, kind of going after the bottlenecks. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. And it's all based on the files and folders that you have on your local system. You know what I mean? So whether you're working on certain things for client work, right? You'll see I have a client folder, skills, I have different projects and GitHub stuff and all sorts of things going on here. So it's file management 101 essentially, right? Just make sure that you're organized from a local standpoint with different files and folder structures.
Okay, interesting. Is there any specific file that's like required, or I would?
That's a good point. So are you familiar with the Claude MD file, right? In a Claude code setup. So a Claude MD file is kind of the brain of your Claude code operation. This might be a little technical, but I use what's called an agents.md file, which is essentially the same thing as a Claude.md file. But when you're using multiple AI coding agents like a Codex in the mix with Claude Code, Codex is going to respond better to an agents.md versus a Claude.md that's specific to Claude Code, if that makes sense. So yeah, you need to have some sort of brain behind your system here with whether it's agents.md or a Claude.md file.
Okay, interesting. Now I heard the phrase second brain is going around quite a lot, whether you're using Obsidian or kind of building it out yourself. What do you think about having kind of our offloading like a second brain?
Yeah, second brain's kind of a buzzword, but I think the actual logic behind it is very important, where you just have a mountain and a vault of context. And so speaking of second brain, I'm glad you brought that up too. I always seem to forget these things when we're kind of going through here. I actually, quote unquote, vibe coded my own Obsidian. Now, Obsidian is a great platform. I've dove into it a little bit. I know a lot of people that I respect in this space use it. You could use Supabase, right? There's a lot of different solutions for this. But I vibe coded this internally with my notes vault that automatically backs up to my Google Drive, okay? And so why this is so important is that if I click my notes, you'll notice that this spans all the way back to March when I set this up. So this, every single time I have a conversation in Claude Code or Codex, it is automatically creating a markdown file of that conversation. What did Ryan talk about? What were the key takeaways? And it's automatically saving this as context. You'll see I'm still scrolling here. I have a mountain of these markdown files, which are just stored in my notes vault that just in case I ever need to go back and reference something from 2, 3, 4 months ago, I'm going to have that mountain of context right there.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's lovely. To anyone listening, like Ryan said, the biggest thing you could implement with these systems to get what you want, that 10 out of 10 outcome, is to have that context, right? So having a context-based, again, whatever tool you're using, as you get through the space, you will realize that there's many ways to skin the cat, as they say. right? But having that context base is massive, whether it is using an outside tool or doing what Ryan did here.
Yeah, something
Um,
with context too that I think has actually really helped me with my marketing work. I'm not going to say who the client is just for confidentiality purposes, but I have a 8-figure SaaS client that I work with. And one thing that's really differentiated us on an SEO level versus everyone else is I set up a similar context system where every time we get on a meeting or every time my client's on a podcast or every time she's doing something with, office hours and all these people come in every week with questions about the SaaS tool. Well, guess what I'm doing, Marlon? I'm saving all of this in a mound of context that when I create this SEO optimized content, that is my unique angle. The AI is scraping through this mountain of context, figuring out how it can make these articles so good that the competition cannot recreate this. Because what does the competition do, right? Or what do most people do? They go to the front page of Google and they recycle the same 5 articles for whatever listicle or keyword that they're trying to get, right? Well, this is how you stand out, is you create unique content from the unique context that you can gather through all sorts of mediums.
One of the things I've always experienced, even potentially with our clients, or just myself in general, a lot of people already have, again, those resources. They have the information. They have the context, whether that's paper, or whether that is online in their drive. It's somewhere. And then to just put, it's basically like putting gasoline on a fire, to then implement AI into that to get the unique aspect of things, right? You don't have to create net new things. A lot of the time, you have the information already available. You just have to now utilize these tools to then, again, get those unique insights.
Absolutely.
Now,
A lot of people are sitting on meeting transcripts. They're
yeah,
sitting on sales transcripts or mountains of email conversations. Now, of course, if there's confidential data, that's a whole other conversation here. But a lot of people have tons and tons of transcripts and emails and meeting notes and all sorts of things where, yeah, you might have to spend a few hours going through that and organizing it. But I'm telling you right now, the more time that you spend doing that, the better off your long-term results are going to be.
now obviously everyone's been talking about AEO, right? Or, the death of SEO. What's kind of the basic steps one could take? Is SEO dead? Do I need to stop worrying about it?
Yeah, so AEO stands for answer engine optimization. There's other terms out there like GEO, right? Generative engine optimization. I've seen LLMO, large language model optimization. Insert new acronym of the week, it seems, in this industry, right? I call it AI SEO or AI search, right? And I just kind of leave it at that. Where what people need to understand, okay, technically in GEO or AEO, you could still show up without a website because it's pulling from multiple sources. YouTube, Reddit, LinkedIn, right? So if I didn't have a website, yes, there is a chance that my YouTube channel could show up in an AI search result in Google Gemini, Claude, or ChatGPT. But that is not the case for most competitive and searched queries, okay? What people need to realize, and I'm just going to show you, this is just ryandozer.com, just some of the statistics behind the scenes here. The funny part about this, okay, is that this site has very little authority, meaning that I don't know if you're familiar with like DR, domain rating, and like those other aspects of SEO, but I only have about a 20 DR. When I started this, if I go back a little further here, so I started creating content on this domain back in like February, early March from 0, right? I had no one to help me out, no like authoritative backlinks coming on this website. So how the hell did I do this? And how the hell did this thing go up and to the right? I think it's a mixture of two things. It's my YouTube channel. So if you search for Ryan Dozer on YouTube, I'm at about 37,000-ish subscribers around there. And so that weighs heavily into Google's algorithm because that factors into the equation. And I would also say it's a combination of high quality, very optimized content for certain keywords and search intent. Now, what exactly do I mean by high quality optimized keywords? Okay. Well, part of my strategy, if I go to the second page here, is repurposing my long form videos into SEO optimized articles. Okay. And this tactic has been around for a few years. This is nothing new, taking a YouTube video to a blog post. But how do you do it effectively? And how do you actually get traffic from it? That's the question, right? And so this kind of lays out the formula. I did an interview with Mark Kashef, really great guy, knows a lot about Claude Code. The target keyword here is Claude Code Hacks. That's a decent keyword. It's only going to get higher search intent, in my opinion, going forward. And so what I did is I have a skill where I have, it's called an SEO blog post writer skill, where all I do in Claude Code is I give it my YouTube video URL and a target keyword, and I say go, right? Because it has the SOP now from all the times that it's reiterated. But with this
Right.
skill, in a matter of minutes, all I do is give it a YouTube video URL and a keyword, and it puts this blog together in minutes, okay? It takes the video, automatically embeds it, finds the external links and the internal links, automatically adds those. Proper H2, H3s. This was custom code that I added in my blog post, right? So Claude Code actually helped me create custom code here. The other cool thing that it does is it has an agent go watch the video, determine what are the cool points of the transcripts, take a screenshot of that part of the video, compress the file before it uploads it to WordPress, which is what my website's still on, automatically adds a caption, and then it determines where in the blog does this image make the most sense, right? So it does like 2 or 3 of these screenshots. Here's another one. And then here's another screenshot that was a significant part of the episode, right? And this is all AI. This was not me at all, besides saying, here's the video URL, here's the keyword, go. Now, did it take me some time to create this at first and refine and reiterate? Absolutely, right? But that's the nature of the beast. You're never going to get something perfect on version 0. But what about version 3, 4, 5, 6, right? That's the idea behind all of this, is that the skills update in real time. And then this just compounds, right? So this is kind of a broader topic here. But the reason that my YouTube channel went from 0 to like 37,000 something in under 3 years, and there's people who have done way better than me, don't get me wrong, is because of my SEO background. I understand keywords, search intent. And so YouTube's the second biggest search engine on the internet, right? And so I understand how to place my videos towards the top of YouTube search results when people are looking for specific keywords that I'm trying to rank for. And then I repurpose that into blogs and attack not only YouTube search here, but we got Google search, AI search, Bing search, right? And that's the benefit of repurposing all this YouTube content so you can get more visibility across different mediums.
Now you mentioned one thing. You mentioned keywords. How do I go about potentially looking for? Is there a tool I can use to find keywords, or just like a hot topic I see on YouTube? How do I go about potentially doing that?
Yep. So there's a lot of free options out there. Google Search. There's like Google Trends. There's Google Keyword Planner. You can use AI for like some free data. There's the big boys. So there's Ahrefs or SEMrush, right? But those tools are competitive. For your average person, one tool that I've actually found works very well with AI solutions like Claude or Claude Code is this tool called Data for SEO. So I swear to God, I put $50 in like 2 months ago, and my balance is at like $45. And I run keyword research data and AI SERP analysis all the time. Now, is this data as good as Ahrefs or SEMrush? Probably not. But guess what? It's probably 80 to 85% there. And for most people, that's really what matters. And the reason why you would want to use this over just going to Gemini or Claude or ChatGPT is because they have internal data that they have behind the scenes that they've collected to make this tool worthwhile. That's how Ahrefs and SEMrush have a moat, is because of the first party data that they've collected over the years.
So then I can come here, I can, get some research around, again, what my audiences may be looking for, what's popular, and then I can come back to VS Code, and then I can say, hey, with that skill you built, make me something around this keyword.
Exactly, right? And I don't know how long this is going to take, but we can literally just say, what's a keyword that you want to do keyword research on? We can just try it in real time here. Is that what it should do? Because I said keyword research, is it should trigger my data for SEO MCP, right? So I have the MCP connection synced up to Claude Code. So first what it did is it found my keyword research skill, right? So I have a keyword research skill. And now it's looking for the MCPs that I have, right? Is it should pull data for SEO and then have that work behind the scenes to actually compile keyword data and other useful data versus just, letting AI spit back at, I would say, very high level data that's not really useful in my opinion. So we can come here and say, use my data for SEO MCP. Yeah, and ideally, right, you would have skill markdown files and you would use things called loops to make this process more efficient. I'm just showing a very, very basic situation if you need to do keyword research. So yeah, this is just high level data from web fetch. So this isn't really pulling in an AI tool, right? This is just pure web fetch. This is Claude going into the internet and trying to figure stuff out on its own high level here. But let's see if it actually, so via the data for MCP. So now it should come in here and call it. I'm not sure. Okay, so there it is, right? So it worked correctly. So there's the green dot. It pulled my data for SEO MCP, and now it's going to go through here and use data for SEO to get keyword data. This is Opus 4.8. I use that for most of my work. I'm on a $100 a month max plan. For those on like a $20 a month plan, Sonnet 5 is going to be your default, because if you're trying to use Opus at scale on a $20 a month plan, good luck if you're trying to do anything meaningful, right? But Sonnet 5 is a pretty good enough model for a lot of knowledge work. And so here's what data for SEO came back with here. And again, I would get, if I was actually using this data for like blog articles, YouTube videos or something, I would get more granular and specific with this. I just did something very high level here where it just shows the keyword. MSV stands for monthly search volume, keyword difficulty, how hard it is on a scale from 0 to 100 to rank for, cost per click, and then intent. What's the search intent? Is it informational? Is it transactional, right? Stuff like that. Now, again, I would get more granular, like something like this. ChatGPT hacks for business, for marketing. So you can get as granular or as broad of data as you want. It goes back to the context and knowing what good looks like and understanding what to ask AI to get the best results possible.
Yeah. Okay. To finish off here, what would you say to somebody listening? What would kind of be your end message? You know, they haven't used AI completely yet to automate their entire life, but they're on that path. What would be kind of an ending message for them?
I would tell them that most AI content they see out there is actually hype and theory that's designed to make you feel behind and scare you, right? So once you see that, it's very disheartening because you're like, well, what's the point? You know, I'm scared of this. Why would I even go in? But you have to just go for it, essentially, right? Because the reality is, and I would say most white collar careers in particular, if you don't start to pick this stuff up, I hate to be that guy, but like, there's not going to be a lot of spots for you as time goes on, right? Because as this continues to go on, it's only going to become more difficult if you're not AI native. And I'm not saying you have to do what I'm doing with these Claude Code and Codex workflows and all these cool things. I'm in the weeds. But you should understand the very basics of how to use AI for, I would say, most, high level 9 to 5 white collar task jobs, right? Whether that's maybe automating, a lead generation thing, or maybe cleaning up an email inbox, or, some very basic things where you can plug and play AI just to save you like maybe a few hours a week at bare minimum, but also just to give yourself leverage in your career. You just have to understand that if you don't have leverage in your career, you're going to be the first one to go when the CEO drops like one of those sorry emails, we just fired half the staff type situation.
Well said. You mentioned YouTube. Where can we find you?
Yeah, Ryan Dozer on YouTube, ryandozer.com. And then I also run a community called the AI Marketing Insiders, free to join, over 1,500 members now at this point.